Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening to everybody. So between me, the panel, and your lunch, we've now got 15 minutes instead of the intended half an hour. But I'll sort of, if you don't mind, we'll take a little bit longer. So the topic is ease of doing business and the global competitive index, and it's becoming increasingly more important when investors are looking at the ease of doing business, and there are many challenges. And there's a number of indicators that I'm sure you've all seen. There's about 11 indicators within the ease of doing business, and these are, let's face it, these are in the domain of government. When I look at them, they're not really within the domain of the private sector. The private sector's sort of a victim of the challenges and the barriers that exist out there, mainly, and because we're all accountants and we do a lot of compliance work, the ease of doing business also translates into how easy it is to comply. So is it easy to comply with taxation? Is it easy to comply with corporate registration? Is it easy to comply with getting NOCs, etc.? So there are a number of challenges that really exist as barriers to doing business. Now, I'd probably like, the panel to sort of be intuitive and really go off on their own areas which they feel have to be shared, rather than sticking to a set of questions. But let me start off with some questions, and then invite the audience immediately to participate, because it's a panel discussion. So whilst I'm talking and whilst the panelists are sharing their views, please do think of questions that you want to ask them around, the challenges that businesses face and how to make industry in Pakistan more competitive, regionally, globally. We've all heard that there are great opportunities, but those opportunities won't be realized if we still are in a minefield of red tape and bureaucracy. So my first question is for Mr. Almas Haider. And Almas, how do you see the investment environment in Pakistan? Less so in terms of opportunities, because I think everybody knows the challenges for local business. So what are your sort of top 3 challenges for businesses, Almas?
Thank you very much for allowing me to kick off. I'm not going to respond to this question.
Good, all right.
So I'm going to say whatever I have to say. The challenges to investment, obviously, we'll talk at the end of what I'm about to say. But let me start with saying that ease of doing business is, yes, it has lots to do with rules and regulations of the government. And the rules and regulations of the government make our life difficult, or they make our life easy. They actually create the landscape on which we play our businesses and and the effort that we put in the economy. But before I start over there, let me also say that ease of doing business, apart from what World Bank says, is also about time. And because I was hoping that this session would start on time, and I have made a commitment to somebody that at the end of the session I'll be there and I'll be meeting somebody, and I'm going to be late. When we are all on time, it reduces costs. If everybody in the company is there at 9 o'clock, imagine how easy life becomes for everybody, because we are all connected to each other. And when one person doesn't come, everybody else is waiting for him to be there, and that's the cost that the company has to pay. I don't know if you guys have calculated this, but the total working life that all of you have is about between 80,000 hours and 90,000 hours. And if you come 1 hour late to your office, you lose 12,000 hours of your life, of your working life. Your total working life is 12,000 days. Time is so critical. Unfortunately, I hope we can complete this session by 1:45 because I have a meeting at 2. But if we don't, then I'll request your leave and I'll just politely leave. Okay, now coming to the real subject. Ease of doing business has 10 indices. And those 10 indices are all about setting up a company. It is about paying taxes. It is about adjudication. It's about closing down a business. It's about trading across borders. 2015, nobody even talked about this. Lahore Chamber of Commerce was the first one to do this analysis of what needs to be done. We looked at every rule and regulation that was affected in our business, and we created a document and we sent it to the government and we started lobbying with it. Initially, there was a resistance to change as is usual. But then over a period of time, I had to narrate some stories. For example, Mr. Putin in Russia. Russia is a communist country. We all think that it's a terrible place to do business in. I can assure you it is easier to do business in Russia than in Pakistan. When Mr. Putin came in 6 years ago, he gave the target to his bureaucracy that Russia has to be at the index of 50. They were at 170, I think, at the index of 50 in 5 years' time. Today, they are around 39, I think. We are at 137, 136 now. And we have improved 11 points because of what the last government did. This government has just come in, so what they are about to do will be reflected very soon in the next 1 year's ranking. And I can see a lot of improvement. I am involved in those, and other friends are involved in what's happening. And we are advising the government again to improve on that. I hope we should be able to improve by at least 15 to 30 points this year on this index. I'll be very happy to see Pakistan on 100 or 99, or on a double digit, if we can do it this year. But again, a lot of it is optics. What we are doing is, a lot of it is optics. For example, on taxes, World Bank says that we pay taxes 47 times a year. World Bank does not recognize the provincial taxes that larger companies pay in the 4 provinces. If we add the provincial taxes or the sales tax and services, the total number of times we pay taxes is 95. And every time we pay a tax, it's an auditable event. Somebody can come to us and say, show us the document, how did you pay this? So what the government has done very recently and done well is they're using ITs so that some of the taxes can be paid on the web, on the net. The World Bank says that if you do it on the net, then we'll recognize the payments on that tax as one. So the moment they did that, we have already officially on the World Bank scale, we are on paying taxes from 47, we have come down to 16 times. But the reality is, in my company, we still have to work the same amount of hours to churn out the same amount of information, and we have to pay the same number of taxes, which is 12 for Social Security and 12 for EOBI and so on and so forth, which is 12 times in a year. Now, what needs to be done is that countries like Singapore and Malaysia, what they have done is they have reduced the number of times you have to pay those taxes. You can pay it every 3 months, you can pay it every 6 months, you can pay it every year. Singapore does it 5 times in a year. Malaysia does it 8 times in a year. India does it 13 times in a year. We are now at 16 on that scale. So yes, there's an improvement going on, but there's a lot of optics also, and we need to chaff out the optics from reality. And I hope first the optics will kick in and then the realities will start kicking in. Because the government is aware of it and the government does really want to do something about it. Now the Prime Minister himself, in his first speech, he talked of ease of doing business. He's taken responsibility for improving it. And this is when the Council of Business Leaders meeting, when I was asked to speak on a couple of things, I talked on this subject. And I asked him, sir, will you take responsibility for improving it? He said, I'll take it personally. And he's good on his word.
Okay.
He's talking about it every month.
Right. Thank you, Almas. Let's bring in some other opinions. So, Jahanzeb, you're leading the Punjab Board of Information Technology, and everybody in the audience knows that technology is going to play a vital part in reducing compliances and improving processes. And Mr. Almas has just mentioned that every time we introduce technology, we probably go up one or go down one notch in terms of the ease of doing business index. So, John, as the head of that agency, what are the key answers that foreign investors, because foreign investors are no doubt important for foreign direct investment, what are they looking for that you've observed during your interactions and your roadshows for foreign businesses?
Continuing on what Almas Saab mentioned and sort of capturing the spirit of, I guess, your question as well. As Amjad Saqib Saab said in his keynote speech, I think the message of hope is very much there. What is important to highlight is that now the ease of doing business reform is very much at the center of government's agenda, in fact, of the Prime Minister's own agenda. And what the effort that we're trying to do in coordination with the Lahore Chamber, in coordination with other stakeholders, and I'm very actually grateful to the political will that's very much there now to really make progress on this front. Is that the ease of doing business canvas is actually beyond and much bigger than what the World Bank metrics capture. So as Almas Saab said, there is a bit of optics there, but then underneath that there is a much wider scope of what it takes to create the right context for investors to come in and function. And in our conversations as the investment promotion agency of the province, continuously something that has been hammered over and over again is that unless we overhaul the regulatory framework within which businesses and investors operate, we would not be able to make any serious progress in terms of taking investments forward. We have, it's a simple metric. We have one of the lowest investment to GDP ratios in South Asia. It's about 15%, way lower than when you compare it to other countries in the region, such as Bangladesh, etc. So one particular initiative that I just want to briefly mention here that we are starting and hopefully would be able to make some progress on it is an overall regulatory sort of improvement in the entire framework of regulations. Because other than the 10 metrics of the World Bank, you have about 26 various provincial departments that businesses might have to deal with for their NOCs and licenses and whatnot, right? And there are about 19 federal departments or agencies that businesses have to deal with. So put together, this is a huge number of businesses that, a huge number of NOCs and regulatory agencies that businesses have to deal with. And I was actually in a meeting with Dr. Ishrat Hussain Saab yesterday, and he mentioned an interesting anecdote. We were talking about this regulation reform. Alfla Bank probably built a building on the Mall Road, and they had to get an NOC from the irrigation department because at some point way back in history, maybe the canal passed through. Right? And so the point is there's so much redundancy that is built into our existing regulation regime. So what we're really looking at right now, number one, is sort of a business process mapping across all the, at least starting with the provincial departments and saying, look, what is it that you need to do to get a particular NOC, because a lot of this stuff is right now undocumented. It's in the form of notifications on single sheets of paper lying around, which leads to a lot of bureaucratic discretion. Each time an investor goes to a particular department, depending on who's sitting in the chair, would be able to come up with a new rule, which would essentially be undocumented, right? So the first thing we're focusing on is business process mapping across departments, and as you can imagine, it's not an easy task. It requires a lot of political will and administrative support from the government infrastructure. And then once we have the mapping done, then hopefully a simplification process of where we can say, you know, if something could be done in 2 steps, why do it in 7 steps, right? So that's the sort of major thrust that we have right now.
Thank you, John Zeb. I'm going to go quickly to Javed Sab, because as part of the PRA leadership, I think a lot of people here, because majority are accountants, they work a great deal with taxation compliance. So from you, I mean, what are the key concerns of taxpayers in Punjab, and what are you doing in order to simplify paying taxes and bring the number of hours down in terms of compliance time on taxation and the number of taxation measures reduced and more efficient?
Thank you very much, Mr. Saab. In fact, me and Janzeb are the respondents in this case, because Almas Saab is on the other side of the fence. So, but we three are the members of that committee which is providing the platform, or which we are thinking in providing ease of doing business. So broadly speaking, there are 3 spectrum to that. One is that we have to provide a regulatory framework. I mean the laws, the taxation laws. And then the second one is the processes and the procedures. And the third one, which we request from you, from the taxpayer, and that is the compliances. On the very first, the laws are cumbersome. Yes, we admit. They need periodical reviews. They should be simplified. And in this regard, we are periodically holding meetings with the other provinces and with FBR to provide a common platform over which we can devise the future tax policies. And if I have to talk about some of the procedures, yes, they are again very difficult. The compliance is not as easy as it should have been. But at the same time, government is focusing on providing ease of doing business and ease of paying taxes as well. We are simplifying the laws, we are simplifying the procedures, we are providing the online payment system, as Mr. Ilmas has already told you. But at the same time, we are focusing our attention in providing the ease of processes. We are in the wake of business process re-engineering in some of the areas like the e-filing, e-registrations, e-payments, and then we are also focusing on one single return for all the taxation authorities, including the FBR, and that will be a great step towards providing the ease of doing business, where number of compliances would be reduced substantially, and at the same time it will provide the easy processes. And then moving forward, we at the PRA, we are trying to make it fully digitized by June 2020, inshallah. And all the processes will be automated. About 70–80% of our processes are already automated. And that will eliminate the role of the middleman. We are just focusing on the pre-populated returns, first of its kind in Pakistan. And that is, I think, will be a great step. And you need not to file the returns at your own. Instead, through an automated system, and that is Strive, we are in line with FBR in verification of the real-time invoices. And through that system, we'll be focusing on our project of providing pre-populated returns. And then we have also imbibed an idea of blue sky thinking from ACCA platform. And we are the first authority and first revenue outfit who has adopted it, and we have indigenized it with our own software. E-filing and e-registration, and beyond that, we'll be focusing on e-proceedings, and with the periodical surgical strikes from the revenue authorities will be focusing on mass audits. But at the same time, that will be a great platform where you need not to come to our offices, rather you will be doing everything online. So these are some of the steps taken by us in the light and in the background of the concerns shown by the taxpayers.
Move on to Saad, the Chief Executive of AXO Nobel. Saad, because you represent an overseas organization, it really represents foreign direct investment within Pakistan. So I think the key question for you is, what are the key decision-making criteria that your organization is using while making investment decisions for growth or expansion?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Arif, and welcome everyone. I'll break it down in simplistic terms. Incidentally, just recently, I was making a case to our regional office for investment in Pakistan, and there was a whole 50 slides presentation with charts and figures and everything. But what it broke down to was exactly what Dr. Amjad said. It was about hope. So any investor, first of all, would evaluate any investment opportunity with regards to hope or the potential of that market. So that's number one. And time and again, in all the companies that I've been in different sectors in 4 companies already. On the hope part, on the market potential part, Pakistan always wins. We have a 6th largest population, so there's a big set of consumers. A lot of them are young, and the young percentage is increasing, as we know. So in terms of the potential, Pakistan always scores very highly. The second aspect of hope is the ability to win. And that's where a lot of the companies have question marks at times. And that's where we need to make and offer our country in a better light. The ability to win is firstly designed by the human resource potential. Again, that's where Pakistan always wins. However, when it comes to repatriation of profits, level playing field, these are the criteria where at times Pakistan falters. When I say level playing field, as we go towards simplification, it actually encourages people to follow the rules, and it encourages all the players to be on the same plane, which helps the companies to be compliant, and it also encourages the foreign players, because as you know, as all of us know, the foreign multinationals are very particular about the values and about the processes and systems. So the more we make it easier for them to follow, and the local players also follow the same, I think it will just make it easier for any foreign investor to invest in the market. That's the first stage. However, I would like to point out over here that one thing where we do face a challenge is repatriation of profit, which I believe is still an area which needs quite a lot of work in Pakistan.
Thank you, Saad. So repatriation of profits in the form of, management charges or fees in the form of dividends. So let's go now to our 2 representatives from the accounting profession. President of ICMAP, Ziaul Haq Saab Mustafa, and also Umar Zahir Mir, of our chairman of our members network panel. And I think the question to you, Ziaul, first of all, is, how are your members working across different sectors and industries, and how are you, as an accounting body, playing a role to support the business community? So, just to get it, the equation right, accountants normally step in to support businesses to cope with barriers, compliance barriers. So, what are you doing on both angles? So, what are you doing on the policy side to improve the business conditions, but what are you also doing on the member side to support, private sector businesses?
Thank you, Arif. Thank you very much. Before answering this question, I would like to just comment on ease of doing business. As I heard, we are at 136 in number in ease of doing business, if we are registered with the tax authorities. And maybe if we are not registered, we are in the top 10 to ease in doing business in Pakistan. So this means the issue is with the authorities, with the registration, whether these are the corporate regulators or the tax authorities. So this is very clear that we have to improve the regulations, we have to improve the legislation for doing business in Pakistan. So as an president of ICMA Pakistan, I would like to share that this organization is working since 1951, and right now 6,000 accountants are qualified from this organization, and we are like a partner with ACCA. We are promoting the profession of accountancy. The domain of ICMA Pakistan is management accountancy, like ACCA has its own domain in the corporate finance, in the business management. ICMAs are working. So both organizations are working together, and this is I am thankful that ACCA has provided this opportunity. What we are doing right now, we have 6,000 members, and almost the members of ICMA Pakistan is working in every sector of economy. We have the first-hand knowledge what are the issues in every sector. So ICMA Pakistan on a frequent basis giving its suggestions for the trade policy, for the budgetary measures, and for the improvement in taxation systems. So the need that what is right now is required, that in the private sector the acceptability of professional accountants are very much, and we see the growth of the private sector. The professional accountants are familiar with the systems, with the ERPs, with the best practices of the corporate world. But when we look towards the public sector, and mostly towards the regulator, what reforms we are looking for, that this is the time of specialization, this is the era of specialized services, and the kind of reforms which are required, mainly that is required in the civil services, that government should undertake, the government should give the pathway to the professional accountants to work in the in the regulators and induct them, so that the policies and the procedures can be defined according to the business requirement. So the accountants are merely not limited up to the now accounting function. They are looking the whole business, the assets, the liabilities, the investment decisions, the taxation, and the global competitiveness. So these things are essential, and the civil services needs to be reformed through the professional accountants by giving them a pathway, and so that the FBR, they must have the qualified accountants, Auditor General of Pakistan, Accountant General of Pakistan. This is very unfortunate that in the Auditor General of Pakistan, less than 50 accountants, qualified accountants are there. So these numbers needs to be increased so that we can go for the best services, best corporate practices. So this is what ICMA is contributing. We are giving the trainings in taxation, we are giving the training in corporate laws, we are creating awareness about the ease to do business, about the cost management, about the financial management. And on the other hand, we are also organizing different forums and different sessions with the public sector entities to give them the suggestions how we can improve the regulatory environment. Basically, we are over-regulated, and we have to switch towards the ease to do business through technology and through competent professional relevance human resource. So the relevance is required. We have good professionals. Civil services produce a lot of good bureaucrats, a lot of good talented but as I said, this is the era of specialization. If we need an IT person, there should be an IT specialized person. If we need the accountants, and if we need the business professionals and business education professionals, then we must have the business professionals on such position, so that the decisions can be made accordingly.
Thank you, Zia. Over to you, Umar. The same question: what is ACCA undertaking to support the government to actually improve policy making, to improve the ease of doing business, and then what is ACCA doing to support its own members in terms of facilitating and easing compliance as well for businesses?
Thank you, Arif. First of all, I would like to congratulate ACCA, particularly the entire team, Sajid, Asad, Shahid, Ahmad, Harun, everyone actually. Sorry if I'm missing anyone's name. And thanks to our global president, Robert, for sparing time and coming to Pakistan and attending this wonderful conference. Coming on to your question, Arif, I was listening very intently to the conversation. Actually, ACCA has and is playing part on multiple arenas with regards to its members. It's training them and equipping them, starting with what I believe is the most important thing, ethics. You have to focus on the ethical upbringing and the value system of your professionals that would be dealing with and advising the businesses as well as the regulators. And ACCA was perhaps one of the first bodies in the world to launch a very comprehensive ethics module focusing on that. In addition to that, with regard to the technical skill set, ACCA has been collaborating and working with accountancy bodies, regulators, very closely engaging in the training programs. We are also honored to be working with the chambers, like we have been running a very successful initiative, which Almasab would definitely be interested in. We have a free of cost tax clinic for the businessman at the Lahore Chamber of Commerce and Industry. That's been done by ACCA. And the satisfaction rate, the feedback has been 100%. And that's been delivered by ACCA's member, me being chairing that. With regard to our own members, we are focusing on ensuring that they are up to date and competent with regard to local laws and taxations. We are also working with the governmental institutions and the regulators to ensure that we can assist them in the professional insights and inputs, how to improve the system and how to ensure that they can properly have a very adequate change management process. Because at times what we do is, we have very good changes, but enforced in a manner that they are not properly adhered to. Let me give you a very quick example. When I was working back in the UK, there was a taxation change. So how that was actually managed, and that's Javed sir for your attention to. For the first year, it was actually announced and propagated. So knowledge, awareness, the drive, people getting to know about that. Then the second year, people were preparing for the change, that we have to upgrade our systems to actually integrate that. And then in the third year, when that was implemented, and at the end of that year, that tax year, that was incorporated in the return. So that was like a 2 to 3 years process. And at times what we have here is, we have some even very good and positive changes implemented in a manner that, okay, this change is now done, from tomorrow you have to start that. Or if it's a very courteous change, from next tax year you have to start that. And at times, even most of the professionals are not fully aware and up to date what that change means and what would be the implications for the businesses. So that is also a very important area where ACCA is assisting. ACCA has been sending detailed budget proposals as well as the reform proposals to both the federal and the provincial governments. ACCA is honored to also be working very closely with regulators in order to assist them with increasing the competence of their officers. Just before this session, I was having a discussion with Javed Saab, where we were discussing about a training program for PRA, where inshallah ACCA would be playing its key role. And let me tell you that most of our problems are coming because of three things. Number one, the trust deficit, not just by the businesses, by the government and the regulators too. We on the business side, and rightly so at times, say we are accused of the wrong things and being dealt a very hard hand. On the regulator side, they often complain that, look, the economy is not documented, and most if not all of the people are being very creative, not paying the due shares. So we have to make do with these measures. So the first thing is to bridge the trust gap by increased communication. Then secondly, we have taxation laws, which are certainly, like Almasa very rightly pointed out, against any modern idea of doing business. I was sharing with Javed Saab in my conversation, I have a friend who is also a client. He started an outsourcing business in Pakistan. and he actually wanted to be properly registered, have everything documented, going through the banking channel very properly. He had many hurdles which were overcome. The final straw, that was it for him, was when he went to the bank, he actually had a marketing setup in the States and the UK, where the people were referring businesses working for him, and then at the end of the month, he would pay them. And he said almost all the banks refused. You can't pay that abroad. He said, what do you want me to do? Go black? Become part of the black economy? Or start using Hawala? I mean, I'm a businessman who want to do it in a legitimate way. I'm being forced to do it in means which are not right, and then tomorrow you'll do my audit and say, okay, we have grabbed someone, we have grabbed a thief who was doing that. But the system is forcing them. So the first thing that we have to do, and Hashim Saab, the provincial finance minister in the morning session, I was very pleased to hear, did share that they are having a thorough review of all the regulations to try to improve them in line with the ease of doing business.
Great.
ACCA is also assisting and advising the government. I also shortly have a meeting with the governor, for which I've requested Sajid Saab that if the session takes a bit longer, then I'll have to take the permission and the leave. I tried to push that forward. So all in all, ACCA is working on multiple fronts, on its own members, increasing their ethical professional value, building their core professional competences, working with the regulators, in addition to training its member, trying to assist to other bodies, institutions and regulators to increase their competence, and working with the government on the policy reforms as well.
Good.
So all in all, ACCA is playing a very effective
Good.
role.
Thank you very much, Umar. So, conscious of time, let me bring in the audience. I know the panel still want to have a few words, but let me bring in the audience. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please raise your hand. We'll have the mic brought to you. Please introduce yourself and ask your question. Any questions out there on, on how we can improve the ease of doing business? Really important long-term metrics for Pakistan. Unless we improve these, whether you call it optics or whether you call it non-optics, this is going to really help the country to improve and get foreign direct investment in. Any questions out there? Oh, yes, you, sir, over there. Second table on the left. Keep your hand up, sir. So please introduce yourself and ask your question.
My name is Usman Habib, Manager of Finance, Alif Industry. My question is directed towards Mr. Almas Saab and Mr. Saad Saab. We were talking about ease of doing business and, as Mr. Mancha said, the reduction in the size of the government. And we have a representative from the government, Mr. Javed Saab. So my question is, what will be your preference when you have to deal with both FBR and PRA? Would you like to prefer to deal with just FBR, or you would prefer to deal with both? So this question interlinks with the reduction in the size of government. Should we have both organizations, both departments, or should we have one?
Okay, that's a really good question. And Mas, perhaps you can have a quick shot.
Very appropriate question. With the things that are happening, let me share a couple of decisions that have principally been agreed, but I hope we see them really happening. The first is that the tax collection has to be separated from service provision. All the inspectors that go to our factories or companies are also tax collectors. So anybody who's from Social Security, UOBI, professional tax, blah, 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 income tax, sales tax, everybody who comes to us is actually a tax collector. What the government has agreed is that, okay, we'll put the taxes in one place and let all of these organizations do the services that they are supposed to provide. If that happens, then all the 32 different inspectors that are coming to different companies and factories, which actually is a harassment, will reduce substantially. So that is one principle that has been agreed. The other is that taxes have to be clubbed. For example, WWF, WPPF, EOBI, Social Security are all about labor. So why can't we put just one tax and let the government decide how much money they want to give to every organization? Similarly, there are provincial taxes like property taxes over there, then there's a professional tax. If they can be clubbed together and you just get one tax and then you decide what do you want to do with it. So if we can club those taxes, that would be great. The third is, there's a dialogue which has recently been started at the NFC level where the provinces and the federal government can have just one organization where the sales tax, for example, is paid both for services and the goods tax. Now, if this happens, after the 18th Amendment, all the 4 provinces have to agree, or some of them have to agree, and if some of them agree, then things will start happening. And I hear some good news on that side also, that this dialogue is going in a positive direction.
Okay,
So if this happens, things are going to improve.
good.
So there will be one organization. It doesn't matter if it is in the federation or in the province, but I hope it will be one organization that we work with.
Great, thank you, Almas. And obviously the trust deficit again arises there. The provinces have to have trust in the mechanism and in the collection agency. Just let me bring in Javed. Was it? You wanted an answer from Javed as well, Mr. Javed from?
I would like a response.
Yes, PRA. So do you envisage really
response,
letting go some of your authority?
I think Mr. Almas has already explained in so many words. There should be one tax organization. But because of the newness of the service tax, PRA was created, and so was SRB and KPRA and BRA. At the heart of this concept was the provincial fiscalization and autonomy, financial autonomy to the provinces. As far as the success of these organizations is concerned, so far they are success stories because of the newness of the system, innovative capability of these organizations, and better outreach. So they have performed well. So we have an equally good case, and we are advocating this cause at the NFC level and at the federal level that sales tax on goods should also be given to the provinces, just for a change. So at the provincial level, yes, there is a concept and there is an agreed principle that PRA should collect all the taxes, whether these are in the shape of cess or duties or the taxes, but there should be an umbrella organizations.
Thank you, sir. So let's go for another question. I saw, I think is it Fizza at the back there? Yes.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful discussion today in both panels. I always ask so many questions, but today, alhamdulillah, I have some of my students here with me today in this event.
Good.
And they have a combined question, and Abdul Hanan will put forward his question towards the panel.
Thank you, ma'am. My question is from the panel, that how do you see the initiative of institutions towards small businesses and homemade industry, especially for women, skilled, unskilled, and educated or uneducated? Please explain.
Okay, so let's take 2 or 3 questions together and then we'll wrap up. Any more questions? No, yes, one question there.
Ahmed Shakil from UMT Lahore. Just I want to ask one thing, कि आप regulations change कर लेंगे, authorities change कर लेंगे, जब तक आप बंदे change नहीं करेंगे कुछ भी नहीं होना. Can you imagine कि मैं tax मतलब मैं chartered accountant हूँ, मैं tax department गया, एक मैंने लेनी थी उनसे extension date की, तो उस चपड़ासी ने मुझसे पैसे मांगे कि मैंने आपको असिस्टेंट साहब के ऑफिस में जाने दिया है. तो आप जितने मर्जी रेगुलेशंस चेंज कर रहे हैं, मैं एक प्रोफेसर ऑफ टैक्सेशन हूँ, पढ़ के थक चुका हूँ, मैं रेगुलेशंस को पढ़ा के भी थक चुका हूँ, और इस नतीजे पे पहुँचा हूँ कि जब तक बंदे चेंज नहीं करेंगे कुछ नहीं होना. सेकंड, ये जो लोग टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट्स के अंदर मौजूद हैं, इनकी अपनी टेक्निकल कंपिटेंस क्या है? CSS करके एम अंग्रेजी करो, टॉप करो और वहाँ पे कमिश्नर लग जाओ, मतलब क्या है? तो जब तक हमारी अकाउंटिंग बॉडीज ICAP, ICMAP, ACCA ये गवर्नमेंट के साथ निगोशिएट नहीं करती कि एक प्रोफेशनल कैडर इंट्रोड्यूस करवाई जाए इन इंस्टीट्यूशंस में, तो तब तक ह्यूमन रिसोर्स का यही हाल रहेगा जो है। आप 10-15 रेगुलेशंस और बना दें, उसमें यही होगा कि आमिर शकील को कुछ और पढ़ाई करनी पड़ेगी ताकि बच्चों को कुछ और पढ़ा सके, इसके अलावा चेंज नहीं आना। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Right. So let's begin to answer the two questions. One was, the last question was about capacity building and goes again back to ethics and behaviors. The first question was around how regulation is supporting SMEs and especially women. I know that ease of doing business also breaks down some of the metrics into how many days it takes women to pay taxes, how many days it takes women to incorporate businesses. That's also part of it. Who would like to answer or take a stab at Janzeb? Yep.
I'll take a stab at the first one. I think with regards to women entrepreneurship and the initiatives that government is taking or has taken. SMEs and particularly SMEs that are run by women is very much a top priority for the government, and the Ministry of Industries and Investments in Punjab has already taken an initiative. They're working at two, I think, particular initiatives. One is a credit guarantee scheme, especially for women entrepreneurs, and the other one is again a financing scheme whereby smaller SMEs, especially run by women, that wouldn't have access to finance would be supported by the government, and there is a ceiling for that. I think it's about a million or so, but $1 million to 3 million rupees, but I may be off the mark on that. So government has two particular initiatives that are specifically designed to help support women entrepreneurship and SMEs.
And technology is, I know you're not part of the IT board, but technology is also a means of factoring out any gender bias, isn't it? I mean,
True.
You don't have to identify your gender when you deal with systems through IT. So increasing IT will also eliminate any gender imbalance as well. Who'd like to go for the second? Sir, Javed Sahab, you'd like to answer the second one?
शुक्रिया सर। मैं आपका जवाब आपकी लैंग्वेज में ही, नेशनल लैंग्वेज में अगर मुझे इजाज़त दें तो। वो जिस तरह का पर्टिनेंट क्वेश्चन था, जवाब पंजाबी में ही बनता है, लेकिन थोड़ा सा पर्दा रहने दी। आपकी ये बजा ऑब्जर्वेशन है, बहुत वैलिड है कि जब तक बंदे चेंज नहीं करेंगे सिस्टम चेंज नहीं होगा। अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमारे यहाँ ये रवायत है कि हम बंदों पे इन्वेस्ट करते रहते हैं और जब बंदे चले जाते हैं, अच्छे या बुरे, तो फिर सिस्टम भी बैठ जाता है। हमें सिस्टम पे इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, लाइक द वेस्ट। रही बात यह है कि जी प्रोफेशनल्स नहीं होते, मेरा ख्याल अब वो दिन नहीं रहे। अब सिविल सर्वेंट्स आते तो एक प्रोसेस के थ्रू हैं। मैं ये आई एम नॉट डिनाइंग कि आपकी इंपॉर्टेंस नहीं है, यू आर वेरी वैलिडली यू हैव पॉइंटेड आउट। अब वेरी रिसेंटली वी रिक्रूटेड अ बैच ऑफ एनफोर्समेंट ऑफिसर्स। There, out of those 20, there are 8 ACCAs, and in the legal team, in our legal team, there are 3 barristers, and this is just the beginning. And we have also advertised for the audit risk compliance officers, and we have invited the applications. Rather, we have conducted the test, and there are CA finalists, ACCAs, ICMA से भी हैं लोग और ACA से भी हैं। So gone are the days. We are mindful of the fact that without specialization, we cannot proceed further. We cannot progress. So at the core of at the heart of this thinking is the competitiveness, and the competitive advantage which we have, inshallah, we will build upon that. And you're always welcome to float these kind of very pertinent observations and suggestions and recommendations. But PRA is not that organization which is old, obsolete, archaic, something like that. We have given the lead from ACCA, think ahead. We always think ahead.
Great. Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you. So let me end on that positive note, because it's always helpful to end on positive notes. And so, you know, Pakistan in the ease of doing business index, unfortunately, has been going the wrong way. But I think the time has come for us all to make a contribution to see the glass half full rather than half empty. Sorry to use that phrase, but you know, I think, and there are good people out there. There are bad people, but there are good people working in the tax authorities, within the FBR, within the PRA. There are good people in Parliament. There are good people in the accounting profession and the law profession. So let's end on a positive note, and let's, like we said right at the beginning, each of us contribute to making a success of the businesses and the firms that we are working in. So with that, please give the panel a big round of applause. Thank you very much. I'll hand back over to Noor.